Class, welcome to lesson number 8. This week we're going to get into classes. Now, classes are really cool things. Essentially, up until now, what we've been doing is we've been working with different types of data, right? We've got our numerics, we've got our strings, we've gone over now lists and dictionaries. We've also learned how to create functions using those. Now, what we want to do though is we want to try putting all that data and functionality together. So when you combine the two, you end up with what we call a class, right? A class is the combination of logic and data to create a new kind of object. Now, read through the text and they go over in great detail, and there's also lots of YouTube videos out there where people go on and on about all the different concepts of what a class is in programming. Take advantage of that information that's out there. Here for this lecture, I'm just going to go over real briefly kind of a quick overview of what a class is, and just try to hit the key points that you're going to need for this week. Okay, so a class, what is it? Well, like I said, it's an object, and within that object, you're going to have data and you're going to have functions. So those types and functions that we've been working with, we're now going to use those to create something here. For my example here, what I'm going to do is let's start with something basic, right? Like an object doesn't have to be something real esoteric or complicated. We can go with it could be your hand, right? And what would be the different things in your hand, right? Your hand's got some data, right? It's got each hand normally has 5 fingers, right? You've got your thumb, your pointer finger, you got a pinky finger. Moving those fingers, so that could be like different kinds of functions that the hand object does. So that's kind of like the way I like to simplify what a class is. A class is a type of object that you'll have data in, and then you'll have methods, or and within that, it's another way of when you put a function inside of a class. In most programming languages, we call those methods. In Python, you still call them functions if you want. It's not a big deal. It's just an interchangeable word. But let's create something. So for my example here, what I've got is let's create a stickman class. Now, how do we define a class? Well, defining a class is very similar to what we were done before with defining functions. So we'll just say class, and then we'll need to give our class a name. So we'll say stickman, and I'm going to say I'm wrapping an object here. With Python 2.7 family and like the 2 series, you actually don't have to do this, put object in here. But going forward, when you start working with Python 3, you do need to put object in there. So we'll just kind of do that. I've kind of just made myself get in the habit. Once we start our class here, much like a function, we want to go ahead and put a docstring in here. So say this is an example of a class. Okay, and now for the structure of a class, we can put data in here right away, or we could initialize it with something. So this was the stickman, right? We wanted to initialize him, so there's a special kind of function for that, and we'll define that here. I'll say def. And now special functions get 2 underscores in front of them and in behind. So you precede it with 2 underscores, and then you have a kind of a suffix of 2 underscores. And we'll say init, and then we'll say self. So if we wanted to assign some data right away, we do it like this, right? We have our init in there, and then we could say we'll say self dot name equals friendly. Okay, so what do we have here? We've got when this class is instantiated, right? When we first say give me this class, it will automatically execute our initialization function. That's what the underscore init means. Just initialize, and it immediately kind of bootstraps and does the different things that we're telling to on these lines here. In this case, I'm saying go ahead and assign the value to string value to name of friendly. Now look, we've got this thing called self here. In other languages, this would probably be called this or something like that if you're working with Java. But Python, we call it self. Now what that means is this is going to be a part, this variable is going to be a part of the class. And so it'll be like data within it. So let's talk about that for a second. If you get your book open, flip back to, let's see, like figure 17-1, or we're talking about the leg B rules, right? And this has to do with scope, right? Like where are our variables, like how much, where. So the scope is within different objects within Python, right? You can access your variables in different ways, and you access your data in different ways, or your objects. So look at figure 17-1, right? We've got built-in, the Python itself. It's got some things going on. You have the globals, and then you have things that are enclosed within functions, and then you have locals. Well, we've got our self here. So this is the scope of this is going to be within any object that's created from this class. All right, so we want our stickman to have some other properties to him, right? Like so let's do this. Let's go ahead and give him. Let's define a left arm. So we'll say self here again because we want to make sure we always use self inside our class because the self is going to be the object passed to itself. All right, and that's it kind of makes sense, right? If you see the self here and it's linked up here. So this is how you tie your class together. And we're going to have an action here. And we'll just say print, and we'll say left arm, and then we'll say action. And we'll say def right arm self action. Okay, and I'm just going to kind of type these out. So what I'm going to do here is just give myself some properties. So I'll say again, right arm. All right, I'm going to type out the rest of this. Okay, so I went ahead and fast forwarded there and spared you watching me type all that out. Okay, so now we've got these different functions within our class, right? We can call the left arm, the right arm, the left leg, or the right leg, and also we've got a function for the face. So essentially, here what we kind of treating this stickman class kind of like a puppet, right? We can use these different defined functions as methods to control our stickman class, or I should say stickman object here. And let's just fire this up. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, and now let's watch what happens here. If I just say F5 to run it, well, nothing happens, right? Because all I've done at this point is I've just defined this class. So this is why it's a little different than just straight programming this out, right? We've got our class, but I need to do something with it. So let's do this other little thing here. Let's say if name equals main underscore. Now see, I'm using these kind of underscores for these special kinds of objects now. And what this is going to do here is this, when I say if name, that's a special property that is assigned out there on the part of Python level, where it says like the name of this file. If Python is executing this file and it is calling it the main file, meaning this is the only file I'm running, then what's going to happen is it will execute this. This is handy because you can kind of use this if name equals main to test things within your Python file, But if you were to call this file later on as a module, then its name is not going to be main. It's going to be something else. And this code underneath this if statement won't execute. So it's handy. So you can have like a module do a bunch of things. And like in this example, we're going to have it manipulate stickman here. But what if I was importing stickman into another Python program? Well, then this little test code down there that I'm going to write, or part of my main statement, is not going to execute anytime I just simply import this file. All right, what else do we want to do here? Well, let's have him do something here. So this is a class, so I need to instantiate something. So we'll create a stickman here. Now I'm going to call stickman class. All right, and notice I put the parentheses open and close on there. So that will instantiate that. And when we look at the definition for the initialization, it's only just calling self. I'll talk about this in a few minutes, but if I was going to have some variables I wanted to pass into this, well, I would have to define these here, something like, I can put my different variable names in there, but I'm not doing that right now. We're just going to operate with a simple class, but we'll come back to that in a second. Actually, probably in the second lecture I'll get into that more. All right, so stickman. So we've now taken the stickman class and instantiated it and created an object called stickman. And for stickman now, let's say we'll use our dot notation, and now let's say left leg say shake the left leg. Alright, so now when we go here, what's going to happen is we've instantiated it. This object now exists as a stickman, and then I say stickman left leg, and I pass it a string called shake. Okay, so now it's going to call this method here, and then it's going to report on it. So I'll save that and hit F5. You guys were just waiting for me to do that, right? Stickman, let's spell it right. There we go. Okay, so let's save that F5 again. Okay, now, spelling aside, here we go. We've now told him to shake his left leg. That's basically how we can manipulate this class. If I also wanted to do something here, if I want to find out his name, right, I could say print stickman dot name. Now what this will do is remember how I said we can have data saved up here, right? And this becomes an attribute, right? Attributes are the data variables that you can access within an object. So self, which is stickman here, or in this case, this stickman variable, I'm calling print the name here. So let's save that, execute. And so now he's shaking his left leg and his name is friendly. Now, what if I wanted to do something a little more? Like we want our stickman to say, let's have him hop. Well, I could define a function. Well, I could do it a number of ways, right? I could call the right number of commands here with using these basic arm and leg movements to coordinate a hop, or I could just have one built in right away. So this is, you can start kind of wrapping and calling your functions, your methods, have your methods call other methods inside the class. Think about this. This is similar to what we did with definitions prior, but now we're just doing it within a class as opposed to doing it within the file itself. Let's create a new function here called hop. And let's put our self variable in there. Okay, now for the stickman to hop, what are we going to do? Well, let's say self left leg, say bend, All right, and right leg bend, and self left leg again, and we'll say jump. And gotta make sure the other leg jumps too, so it's, self right leg jump. And what else can happen here? Well, we could say self face smile. So now we've sort of created a sort of a combination. So what's happening here now is anytime this definition is called within this stickman object, it will execute within itself. It can go left leg, so it can call all of its own functions because see these are all part of the object itself, right? Anything we're calling with self means it's a part of the object, so we can reference it within the scope of the object. So we'll change this up and we'll say stickman hop. So you don't have to pass it any variables. And we could finish it off again with stickman, say right arm, wave goodbye. Alright, saved it, F5, and there we go. So as we wanted to, we said called hop. Hop called all those different internal functions, and then it also I just called a right arm. So you could have different, other kinds of things here. Right? We've got, we could put some data in here. We call it, like a word. And you could say hi. And now you could, if you wanted to, we could go down here and we could create another, actually we'll add this. We'll say print self word. So that's the basic gist of creating a class, right? We've made this new object called stickman. Now you've already been working with other kinds of objects, right? You've had dictionary objects and list objects, and some of those tasks we've had you do, some of those, we had some object that we went ahead and created for you, like for data import and things like that, different functions. But this is now how you can create a class yourself. And what if I wanted to have a second stickman? Well, I could change this around now, and I could say stickman1, and let's create here stickman1 face, and we'll say wink, and then I can create another stickman. I'll say stickman2, and we'll say face, nod. There's a face. Can a face nod? Nah, it's probably the head would nod, so we need to create a head thing for that. But we'll just make him smile again. Save it, F5. Now, what we've had happen here, like, look, see, it's kind of hard to tell when I print it out. So both these things, outputted something called face. So if I wanted to, I could, start to go in here and modify this and say like, oh, maybe, it needs to say the name, right? Or, oh, now here's another property of this. Now this is mutable, right? We can change this. It's initially created and assigned the value friendly, but if I wanted to, I can change that here. I can say stickman1 name equals Bob, and then I could say stickman2 name equals Fred. And just for example, what I'm going to do, let's just go ahead and modify this. Let's change this print function up a little bit. So we'll do some formatting, and we'll say it's face, and then we'll put the other in here. I'll say format, and now we need to know the name, so we'll say self name, and then we'll say just the action. That's all we need there. Alright, and save it, and F5. So here's my attribute data that I'm assigning, but as you can see, I can change that directly once I've created it. Right? Once I've instantiated it and assigned this variable a class object called stickman, and then it comes with an attribute called name that I can either use as it was given to me, or I can put my own string in there. And then I did the same thing again for stickman2. So I could go on making stickman. Just like when you say I want this variable to be a list, that's really what Python's doing behind the scenes. Is it's just going and taking an object and creating a list for you. So now using this kind of method, you can create your own objects based on classes, and within those objects you can have data and functions.